The ship landed softly on the golden platform of Theron Prime. Unipark stood near the window and looked at the alien world below. Tall towers of white stone reached toward the purple sky. Flying vehicles moved between buildings like silver birds. It was beautiful. It was also the heart of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Una took a deep breath. She was 42 years old. She had spent 20 years as a diplomat, traveling to distant worlds and making friends for humanity. But this mission was different. This was the first time a human would speak directly to the Velkai High Chancellor. This was the first time humanity would offer a real treaty to the Galactic Empire. Her assistant, a young man named Junho, walked to her side. His face showed worry. "Ambassador, are you sure about this?" he asked. "The Velkai have never respected younger species. They see us as children." Una smiled gently. "That is exactly why we must try, Junho. If we do not offer our hand in friendship, how can we blame them for not taking it?" She picked up a small case from the table. Inside was the treaty. Months of work. Hundreds of meetings. The hopes of 12 billion humans on Earth and 30 colony worlds, all contained in one document. The doors of the ship opened. Una walked down the ramp with her head held high. Velkai guards waited for her. They were tall creatures, nearly 3 meters in height, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were black and cold like deep space. They did not greet her. They simply turned and walked toward the palace. Una followed without complaint. The throne room of Chancellor Krell was enormous. The ceiling was so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Thousands of Velkai nobles stood on either side of a long red carpet. At the end sat Krell himself on a throne made of dark metal and glowing crystals. Krell was old, even by Velkai standards. His skin had turned from blue to gray. His 4 hands rested on the arms of his throne like dead spiders, but his eyes were sharp and cruel. He had ruled the empire for 300 years. He had crushed rebellions, destroyed civilizations, and expanded his territory to cover half the galaxy. To him, humans were nothing. Insects that had somehow learned to build starships. Una walked the long carpet alone. Every step echoed in the silent hall. She could feel thousands of eyes watching her, judging her, mocking her. She stopped before the throne and bowed respectfully. "High Chancellor Krell," she said in a clear voice. "I am Una Park, Ambassador of the United Earth Council. I come bearing a message of peace and a treaty of friendship between our peoples." Krell did not move for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. It was not a kind smile. "Peace," he said. The word dripped with contempt. "Friendship. These are strange words from a species that has existed for such a short time. Your kind discovered fire while we were building our first starships. You learned to write while we were conquering our 100th world." Una remained calm. "That is true, Chancellor. We are young. But youth does not mean weakness. We have much to offer. Trade, technology, cultural exchange. We believe that cooperation benefits everyone." Krell laughed. The sound was harsh and cold. The nobles around the room laughed too, like trained animals following their master. "You believe you have something to offer us?" Krell leaned forward. "Let me tell you what you will offer, human. You will offer your worlds, your resources, your people. You will surrender everything to the Empire, and we will allow some of you to live as servants." Una felt her heart beat faster, but she did not show fear. "I am afraid that is not acceptable, Chancellor. Humanity will not surrender. We came here seeking partners, not masters." The laughter in the room stopped. The silence that followed was heavy and dangerous. Krell's eyes narrowed. "You dare refuse me? You dare speak to the ruler of 1,000 worlds as if you were my equal?" "I speak to you as one leader to another," Una said quietly. "With respect, but also with honesty. We want peace, but we will not buy peace with our freedom." For a moment, something flickered in Krell's eyes. Perhaps surprise? Perhaps a tiny spark of respect. But it was quickly buried under centuries of pride and arrogance. "You have made a terrible mistake, human." Krell raised one of his hands. Guards stepped forward from the shadows. You came here thinking you could bargain with gods. Instead, you will serve as a lesson to your pathetic species. Yuna understood what was about to happen. She did not run. She did not beg. She simply stood tall and looked directly into Krell's eyes. If you do this, she said calmly, you will regret it. Not today. Not tomorrow. But someday, you will understand the price of this moment. Krell smiled his cruel smile. Kill her. Broadcast it to every world. Let the humans see what happens to those who refuse the Empire. The guards raised their weapons. Yuna closed her eyes and thought of Earth, of blue oceans and green forests, of her family waiting for her return. The shots rang out. Unipark fell to the cold marble floor. Her blood spread across the stones like red paint on white canvas. Across the galaxy, billions watched the broadcast in horror. On Earth, Admiral Taiho Kong stood in the command center of the United Fleet headquarters. His daughter Hannah stood beside him. They watched in silence as the woman who had been their friend, their colleague, their hope for peace, was murdered in front of the galaxy. Taiho's face showed no emotion, but his hands, hidden behind his back, were shaking with rage. Father, Hannah whispered. What do we do? Taiho did not answer immediately. He watched as Krell returned to his throne, as the Velkai nobles laughed and celebrated. As the broadcast showed Yuna's body being dragged away like garbage, finally he spoke. His voice was quiet but harder than steel.
Alva Council.
Every member, every military commander, every ship captain. Hannah nodded and turned to leave. And Hannah, Taiho added. She stopped. Tell them to prepare for war, but tell no one else. Not the media, not our allies, and especially not the Empire. His eyes were cold now, like ice over a frozen lake. They wanted silence from us. They will get silence. Until we are ready to show them what that silence was hiding. Within the hour, the United Earth Council voted. The decision was unanimous. War. But the galaxy heard nothing. No angry speeches. No declarations. No threats. Just silence. And in that silence, humanity began to prepare for something the Velkai Empire could never imagine. Revenge. 3 months passed after the death of Unipark. The galaxy waited for humanity to respond. Some expected a desperate attack. Others predicted surrender. The betting markets on neutral worlds offered good odds on both options, but nothing happened. Human. Trade ships stopped arriving at Empire ports. Communication channels went quiet. The border stations reported no activity. It was as if humanity had simply disappeared behind an invisible wall. On Theron Prime, Chancellor Krell celebrated his victory. He held great feasts and told stories of how the humans had trembled before his power. The nobles laughed and praised their wise leader. The military commanders relaxed and reduced patrols near human space. They are cowards, Krell announced to his court. They hide in their little corner of the galaxy like frightened children. They know that any attack would mean their complete destruction. So they do nothing. They will do nothing forever. The Empire believed him. Why would they not? They had ruled for 10,000 years. They had defeated every enemy. What could a young species with only 30 worlds possibly do against the greatest power in history? But they were wrong. So very wrong. Far from Theron Prime, in the cold darkness between stars, a small ship drifted silently. Its name was Shadow Dancer, and it was unlike any vessel the Empire had ever seen. Its hull was covered in special material that absorbed sensor signals. Its engines produced almost no heat. To any scanner, it looked like nothing more than a piece of space rock. Commander Hannah Kong sat in the captain's chair, studying the holographic display in front of her. It showed an Empire military base on the planet below. Ships, weapons, soldiers, supply storage. Everything carefully counted and recorded. That makes 47 bases mapped in this sector, said Lieutenant Yoon Cho from the communications station. She was young, barely 25, but she was the best cyber warfare specialist in the human fleet. Another 3 months and we'll have complete information on every military installation within 200 light years of the border. Hannah nodded slowly. Good. Send the data to Oracle through the secure channel. Oracle was humanity's greatest secret. A network of artificial intelligences working together across dozens of hidden stations. It processed information from hundreds of spy ships like Shadow Dancer. It analyzed Empire communications. It found weaknesses and created strategies. The Empire did not know it existed. In another part of the galaxy, Captain Minho Seok walked through the crowded streets of a Tirani city. The Tirani were small creatures with green skin and large eyes. They had lived under Empire rule for 800 years. They were slaves in everything but name. Minho wore a hooded cloak to hide his human features. He stopped at a small shop that sold electronic parts. The owner, an elderly Tirani named Kova, looked up with tired eyes. "I am looking for a special component," Minho said quietly. "Something that can help a communication system reach very far distances." Kova studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, the old Tirani smiled. "Come to the back room. I think I have what you need." In the back room, Minho met with leaders of the Tirani resistance. They were suspicious at first. Why would humans help them? What did they want in return? Minho placed a small device on the table. It was a shield generator, small enough to fit in a pocket, but powerful enough to protect a person from energy weapons. "This is a gift," he said. "The first of many. We are not asking you to fight for us. We are asking you to be ready. When the time comes, you will know. And when that time comes, you will have the tools you need." The resistance leaders looked at each other. For 800 years they had dreamed of freedom. For 800 years they had known it was impossible. But now, looking at this strange human and his impossible gift, something stirred in their hearts. Hope. Similar meetings happened across the Empire. On Beck homeworld, where the insect-like Beck people worked in mines until they died. On the water planet Narus, where the fish-like Neron were forced to harvest precious corals. On a dozen other worlds where oppressed species had given up all hope of freedom, humanity gave them weapons, communication devices, medical supplies, and most importantly, humanity gave them a promise. Be ready. Ambassador Jaewon traveled in secret, moving from world to world like a ghost. He was Yuna's replacement, though the Empire did not know he existed. Where Yuna had offered peace openly, Jae built alliances in shadow. He met with the Beck Queen in her underground chamber. "Your people have suffered long enough," he told her. "When humanity strikes, your guards will suddenly find their weapons not working. Your slave collars will unlock. What happens next will be your choice." The Queen studied him with her compound eyes. "And if you fail, if the Empire destroys you, then you will be no worse than before," Jae said simply. "But if we succeed, your children will know freedom." The Queen was silent for a long time. Then she extended one of her clawed hands. Jae shook it without hesitation. Back on Earth, Admiral Taiho oversaw the construction of new warships. They were built in hidden facilities inside asteroids and moons where Empire sensors could not reach. Each ship was equipped with the latest technology: better shields, faster engines, deadlier weapons. The factories worked day and night. Workers slept in shifts. Scientists pushed themselves to the limit of exhaustion. Everyone understood what was at stake. Hannah returned from her mission and met with her father in his office. "The mapping is complete," she reported. "We know every base, every patrol route, every supply line. Oracle has identified 112 critical targets. If we hit them all at once, the Empire will be blind and crippled." Taiho looked at the data on his screen. Numbers, coordinates, probabilities. Behind every number was a life that would be lost. Human lives. Enemy lives. Innocent lives caught in between. 1 year, he said quietly. That is how long we have been silent. Krell thinks we are afraid. He tells his people that humans are cowards who will never fight back. Let him think that, Hannah said. Her voice was cold. Let him believe it until the moment our ships appear above his worlds. Taiho stood and walked to the window. Outside, the lights of the city glowed against the night sky. Somewhere out there, families were having dinner. Children were doing homework. Normal life continued, unaware of the storm that was coming. I keep thinking about Yuna, he said softly. She believed in peace. She truly believed that we could find common ground with the Velkai. She died for that belief. Hannah joined him at the window. She died because they would not listen. She offered them friendship, and they gave her death. That was their choice, Father. What comes next is the consequence of that choice. Taiho nodded slowly. 1 more month? We will need 1 more month to finish preparations. Then we will show the galaxy what human silence really means. Far away on Theron Prime, Chancellor Krell was having another celebration. He raised a glass of expensive wine and smiled at his guests. To victory, he announced. To the eternal glory of the Empire. And to the foolish humans who learned their place in the galaxy. Nobles cheered and drank. They did not know that in 30 days, their world would begin to burn. They did not know that the silence they mocked was the sound of humanity sharpening its sword. And they did not know that when that sword finally fell, it would cut deeper than anything in the history of the galaxy. The silence was almost over. The storm was coming. It happened at exactly 400 Galactic Standard Time. 1 year to the minute after Unipark was killed across the Empire. On 47 different worlds, communication relay stations exploded. Some were hit by missiles that came from nowhere. Others were destroyed by bombs planted months ago by human agents. A few simply stopped working as hidden computer viruses activated and burned out their systems. In seconds, the great network that connected the Empire fell apart. Worlds that had talked to each other for thousands of years suddenly found themselves alone. Admirals could not contact their fleets. Governors could not call for help. The mighty Velkai Empire was suddenly a collection of isolated islands in a dark ocean. And then the human ships appeared. Admiral Taiho Kong stood on the bridge of the dreadnought. Vengeance. Through the view screen, he could see the massive shipyard of Varith. It was the largest construction facility in the Empire, capable of building 100 warships at once. 12 Velkai capital ships floated nearby, protecting their precious factory. All ships, this is Admiral Kang, Taiho said into the communication system. His voice was calm and steady. 1 year ago, they killed a woman who came offering peace. Today, we teach them the price of that murder. All weapons free, attack. The first fleet opened fire. The Velkai had never seen weapons like these. Human engineers had spent the year of silence improving everything. Missiles that could change direction 10 times before hitting their target. Energy beams that cut through shields like knives through paper. Electronic attacks that confused sensors and disabled engines. The first Velkai ship exploded within 30 seconds. The second and third followed quickly. The defenders tried to organize, but their communications were jammed. They could not coordinate. They could not call for backup. They could only fight and die. 4 hours later, the shipyard was nothing but floating debris. 12 enemy capital ships had been reduced to burning wreckage. The first fleet had lost only 6 vessels. At the same time, Commander Hannah Kong led her strike force against Theres Station. This was the Empire's main fuel depot, supplying energy to thousands of ships across dozens of sectors. The station was protected by defense, platforms, and patrol ships. But Hannah had studied their patterns for months. She knew exactly where the gaps were, exactly when the guards changed shifts, exactly which sensors had blind spots. Her ships slipped through the defenses like shadows in the night. By the time the alarm sounded, human soldiers were already boarding the station. Fighting in the corridors was brutal and quick. The Velkai guards, surprised and confused, fell one after another. Hannah led the assault team personally. She kicked down the door to the main control room and shot 3 guards before they could raise their weapons. The station commander, a Velkai officer with medals covering his chest, stood frozen in shock. "This station belongs to humanity now," Hannah said coldly. "You have 2 choices. Surrender and live. Resist and die. Choose quickly." The commander looked at his dead guards. He looked at the human soldiers pointing weapons at him. Slowly, he raised his 4 hands in surrender on Kelos 4. "Captain Doyan Ru, led 50,000 ground troops in the largest planetary invasion in human history. The target was a Tyranni colony that had suffered under Empire occupation for centuries. The invasion began with thousands of drop pods falling from the sky like metal rain. Doyon was in the first wave, hitting the ground hard, near the main Velkai garrison. He was already shooting before his pod door fully opened. The fighting was intense. Velkai soldiers were larger and stronger than humans. But humans were faster, more creative, and absolutely determined. They used tactics the Velkai had never seen. Teams of 3, working together, covering fire and flanking movements, grenades thrown with perfect timing, and then something unexpected happened. The Tyranni, the small green-skinned people who had been slaves for 800 years, rose up. They attacked their guards with farming tools and stolen weapons. They blocked roads and jammed communications. They did not have military training, but they had rage. 800 years of rage. By sunset, the Velkai garrison had fallen. Doyon stood in the central square of the colony's main city. Around him, Tyranni citizens were crying and hugging each other. For the first time in 8 centuries, they were free. A young Tyranni girl walked up to Doyon. She could not have been more than 10 years old. She looked up at him with her large eyes and said 2 words in broken standard language. "Thank you." Doyon knelt down to her level. "You do not need to thank us. This was always your freedom. We just helped you take it back." The uprising spread like fire. On Beck homeworld, the insect people overwhelmed their guards with sheer numbers. On Neris, the Nerons sabotaged the underwater factories and escaped into the deep ocean where the Velkai could not follow. On world after world, species that had been oppressed for generations suddenly found the courage to fight. On Theron Prime, Chancellor Krell received reports of disaster after disaster. Each report was worse than the last. Shipyard destroyed, fuel depot captured, communications network collapsed, rebellions on 30 worlds. And through it all, human warships appearing out of nowhere, striking targets that should have been impossible to reach. How? Krell demanded, slamming his fist on his throne. How is this possible? They are primitives. They have only 30 worlds. How can they strike us in 100 places at once? His advisors had no answers. Their carefully built intelligence network had told them nothing about human preparations. Their confident assessments of human weakness had been completely wrong. Everything they believed had been a lie. "Send the reserve fleet," Krell ordered. "Crush these insects once and for all." The admiral in charge of the reserve fleet tried to comply. But when his ships attempted to leave their bases, they found their navigation systems corrupted by viruses. Their fuel readings were wrong, showing full tanks that were actually empty. Their weapon systems had locked up with error codes that no one could fix. "Lieutenant." Yuncho smiled as she watched the chaos unfold on her monitor. She had spent months placing those viruses in Empire systems. Tiny programs hidden in routine communications. Sleeping codes waiting for the signal to wake up. Now they were awake, and the Empire's mighty military machine was eating itself from the inside. "Stage 3 is complete," she reported to Admiral Taiho. "Their reserve fleet is completely disabled. It will take them at least 2 weeks to fix the damage, probably longer." Taiho nodded. "Good. By then we will control their entire eastern sector. Send word to Ambassador J. Tell him it is time for Phase 4. On a dozen neutral worlds, Ambassador J. Wan stepped out of the shadows and into the light. He met with leaders of independent nations. He offered them evidence of Empire atrocities. He showed them the strength of the new Free Systems Alliance. "The Empire's falling," he told them. "You can stand with us and help build something better. Or you can stand against us and share their fate. Choose wisely." Most chose wisely. 1 year after Unipark's death, the galaxy had changed forever. The unstoppable Empire had been stopped. The unbreakable chain of oppression had been broken. And the small, young species that everyone had dismissed as insignificant had shown the universe what they were truly capable of. But the war was far from over. Chancellor Krell was still alive. Theron Prime was still standing. And the Velkai, despite their losses, still had the largest military in the galaxy. The storm had arrived. Now came the long, bloody work of finishing what had been started. Admiral Taiho looked at the star map in his command center. Red dots marked destroyed targets. Green dots showed Allied forces. Yellow dots indicated ongoing battles. There were so many dots. So many lives being spent. This is just the beginning, he said quietly to himself. The real fight has not even started yet. He was right. The worst was still to come. The war lasted 2 years. 2 long, bloody years of battles across 1,000 star systems. And in those 2 years, the galaxy learned a lesson it would never forget. Humanity did not know how to surrender. The Velkai had expected the humans to collapse after the first few months. They had expected fear to break their spirit, losses to weaken their resolve, exhaustion to slow their advance. They had expected humans to behave like every other species they had conquered. They were wrong. On the ice world of Frosta, a company of human soldiers was surrounded by 5,000 Velkai troops. The commanding officer, a woman named Captain Sujin Moon, had only 300 soldiers left. They had been fighting for 6 days without sleep. Their ammunition was almost gone. The enemy offered surrender terms. Sujin's response was simple. Come and take us. The Velkai attacked in waves. The humans held their position in an old mining facility. They fought with guns until the guns were empty. They fought with knives when the guns failed. They fought with rocks and bare hands when the knives broke. After 18 hours, reinforcements finally arrived. 200 human soldiers were still standing. Around them lay the bodies of more than 2,000 Velkai. Sujin was asked later how they survived. She shrugged and said, "We are human. We do not know how to give up." Stories like this spread across the galaxy. The Tirani told tales of human bravery around their fires. The Beck wrote songs about human sacrifice. The Naran carved human figures into their coral temples. Humanity became more than just another species. They became a symbol. Commander Hannah Kong became the most famous human in the galaxy. Her face appeared on rebel posters across dozens of worlds. They called her the Iron Woman, the Stormbringer, the Hand of Revenge. She hated all the names. But she understood their importance. Her most legendary moment came at the Battle of Krell's Gate. This was a crucial hyperspace junction that controlled access to the Inner Empire. The Velkai defended it with their newest dreadnought, the Eternal Sword, and a fleet of 70 warships. Hannah attacked with only 30 ships. It was supposed to be a diversion while the main fleet hit another target. But when the battle turned against her, when half her ships were destroyed, and the Eternal Sword was closing for the kill, Hannah made a decision that changed the war. Her cruiser, the Starfire, was badly damaged. Engines failing. Shields gone. Most of the crew dead or wounded. But the ship could still move, and the Eternal Sword was right in front of her. All hands abandoned ship, she ordered through the crackling communication system. Get to the escape pods. Now. Her crew obeyed without question. They trusted her completely. Within 3 minutes, the Starfire was empty except for Hannah herself. She aimed her broken ship directly at the Eternal Sword's engine section. The Velkai tried to shoot her down, but their weapons were designed for warships, not for small targets moving unpredictably. Hannah dodged and weaved using every trick she knew. At the last second, she ejected. Her pod shot away from the Starfire just as it slammed into the Eternal Sword's engines. The explosion was visible from orbit. The mighty dreadnought, pride of the Imperial fleet, broke in half and burned. Hannah floated in space for 6 hours before a human rescue ship found her. When they pulled her into the airlock, she was barely conscious. Her first words upon waking were, "Did the Eternal Sword go down?" When told yes, she smiled and fell back asleep. The Free Systems Alliance grew stronger with each victory. Ambassador Jaewon worked tirelessly to unite the liberated species. It was not easy. The Tirani and Beck had old conflicts between them. The Narration did not trust anyone who could not breathe underwater. A dozen other species had their own problems and prejudices, but Jay was patient. He listened to everyone. He found common ground. He reminded them that they had all suffered under the Empire, and they could all benefit from working together. The Alliance signed its formal charter on the anniversary of Unipark's death. Representatives from 23 species gathered on a neutral station. They pledged to defend each other, to share resources, to build a new order based on equality and respect. Jay placed Yuna's old diplomatic badge on the table during the signing ceremony. "This belonged to the woman who started everything," he said. "She believed that different species could live together in peace. She died for that belief. Today we make her dream real. It's back on the front lines." Captain Minho Seok led the defense of Nex Prime. This was a critical world that controlled supply routes to 6 human colonies. The Empire threw everything they had at it. 20,000 Velkai soldiers, hundreds of armored vehicles, air support that darkened the sky. Minho had 8,000 defenders and limited supplies. Logic said he should retreat. Mathematics said he could not win. He stayed anyway. For 72 hours, the battle raged. Human soldiers held their positions through constant bombardment. When one line fell, they fell back to the next. When they ran out of missiles, they used captured enemy weapons. When the enemy breached the walls, they fought in the streets. When the streets fell, they fought in the buildings. When the buildings collapsed, they fought in the tunnels beneath. On the 3rd day, relief forces arrived. Admiral Taiho himself led the fleet that broke the Velkai blockade. Ground reinforcements landed and pushed the enemy back. By sunset, Nex Prime was secure. A reporter asked Minho how he held out for so long against such odds. Minho, exhausted and covered in dirt and blood, thought for a long moment before answering. "We do not know how to quit," he said simply. "It is not in our nature. When humans decide something matters, we do not stop until it is done or we are dead. There is no middle option." The interview spread across the galaxy. The Velkai saw it and felt fear. Their other subjects saw it and felt hope. Humanity had become something more than a species. They had become an idea. And ideas were much harder to kill than soldiers. Chancellor Krell watched his empire crumble month by month. Systems that had been loyal for millennia declared independence. Admirals who had served him faithfully surrendered to avoid pointless death. Resources that seemed endless began to run dry. His advisors begged him to negotiate. "The humans have won," they said. "We can still save something if we talk to them now. If we wait longer, we will lose everything." Krell refused. His pride would not allow it. "We are the masters of this galaxy," he insisted. We have ruled for 10,000 years. We do not bargain with vermin. We do not surrender to primitives. We fight until victory or death." His advisors bowed and left. Some of them secretly began making plans to escape. They knew what was coming. Admiral Taiho gathered his fleet for the final push. 300 human warships, 200 allied vessels from the Tirani, Bek, Neyron, and others. The largest military force the Alliance had ever assembled. He sent a message to Theron Prime. It contained only 5 words: "We're coming for you." Krell received the message in his throne room. The same room where Yuna had died. The same floor that had been stained with her blood. He read the 5 words and felt something he had not felt in 300 years. Fear. But he pushed the fear down. He called for his remaining admirals. He ordered every ship, every soldier, every weapon to defend the homeworld. He would make his final stand at Theron Prime. If the Empire was going to die, it would die fighting, and humanity was ready to give them that. Fight. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The sky above Theron Prime burned with the light of 1,000 ships. Admiral Taiho. Kong stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, looking at the enemy fleet arranged before him. 800 Velkai warships formed a massive sphere around their homeworld. It was the largest defensive formation in galactic history. Behind those ships waited orbital defense platforms, ground-based weapons, and millions of soldiers ready to fight to the death. The Alliance fleet was outnumbered. 400 human ships and 200 allied vessels against 800 enemy warships. The mathematics were not in their favor. Taiho did not care about mathematics. All ships, "This is Admiral Kung," he said over the fleet communication channel. "Behind that fleet is the world where Unipark was murdered. Behind those defenses sits the throne where Chancellor Krell laughed as she died. We have traveled across the galaxy. We have fought for 2 years. We have lost friends, family, and comrades. Today, we end this." He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. "Fight well. Fight hard. And remember why we are here. For Una, for humanity, for everyone who has ever suffered under Empire tyranny. Attack." The Alliance fleet surged forward. The Battle of Theron Prime began like a storm breaking against a mountain. The first wave of human ships crashed into the Velkai defensive sphere with devastating force. Missiles flew in both directions. Energy beams cut through the darkness. Ships exploded in balls of fire that lit up the void. Commander Hannah Kong commanded her new ship, the Retribution, from the center of the assault. She had personally selected her crew from volunteers across the fleet. Every one of them had lost someone to the Empire. Every one of them had a personal reason to fight. "Target their command ships first," Hannah ordered. "Break their coordination, and the rest will fall apart." The Retribution led a squadron of 12 cruisers through a gap in the enemy formation. They dove into the heart of the Velkai fleet, weapons firing constantly. 3 Velkai battleships turned to intercept them. Hannah did not slow down. "All power to forward shields," she commanded. "Ram through them." The Retribution smashed through the first battleship's defense screen, so close that their hulls almost touched. Her gunners fired point-blank into the enemy's reactor section. The battleship exploded behind them as they passed. The second battleship managed to score several hits on the Retribution. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded in. Half of Deck 7 was exposed to space. The medical bay was destroyed. Over 100 crew members dead in seconds. Hannah gripped her command chair as the ship shook from another impact. "Return fire. Everything we have." The Retribution and the battleship exchanged blows like 2 fighters in a ring. Both ships were dying, systems failing one after another, but the human gunners were faster, more accurate, more determined. The second battleship's engines exploded. It drifted away, burning and helpless. The third battleship tried to retreat. A Tyranni destroyer cut off its escape. A Beck attack ship hit it from below. A Neyron torpedo boat finished it off. The Alliance fleet was not just human anymore. It was something greater. Different species fighting together, covering each other's weaknesses. Combining their strengths, the battle raged for 3 days. On the first day, the Alliance broke through the outer defensive sphere. The cost was high. 90 ships destroyed, thousands of lives lost, but they kept pushing. On the second day, they reached the orbital defense platforms. These massive stations had weapons capable of destroying entire cities. Captain Doyen Rue led ground assault teams to capture them. His soldiers fought in the corridors of the stations, clearing room by room, deck by deck. The fighting was brutal and exhausting. Doyen lost an arm when a Velkai officer detonated a grenade at close range. He used his remaining hand to shoot the officer, then kept fighting for another 6 hours before allowing the medics to treat him. "I can rest when the war is over," he told them. On the third day, the Alliance reached the final defensive line. The remaining Velkai ships, about 300, formed a wall between the humans and their planet. Among them was the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion, the largest and most powerful ship in the galaxy. Admiral Taiho ordered his fleet to halt. He opened a communication channel to the Eternal Dominion. "Velkai Commander," he said, "you have fought bravely. Your defense has been more than we expected. But you know how this ends. Surrender now, and your crews will live. Continue fighting, and you will all die. Choose." There was a long silence. Then the Velkai commander responded. His voice sounded tired, defeated. "We cannot surrender, human. Chancellor Krell has ordered us to fight to the last ship. Our families on the planet below will be punished if we disobey. We have no choice." Taiho closed his eyes for a moment. War was cruel. It forced people to do terrible things whether they wanted to or not. "Then I am sorry for what comes next," he said. May your gods receive you with honor. He gave the order to attack. The final battle was short but vicious. The Alliance fleet swarmed the remaining Velkai ships from all directions. The Eternal Dominion fought magnificently, destroying over 40 Alliance vessels before its shields finally failed. A concentrated barrage from 12 human dreadnoughts cracked its hull open. It broke apart slowly, spinning toward the planet below with the flagship gone. The remaining Velkai resistance collapsed. Some ships surrendered. Others tried to flee. A few charged suicidally into the Alliance formation. Within an hour, it was over. The path to Thurn Prime was open. Admiral Taiho broadcast a message to the planet. His face appeared on every screen, every display, every communication device on the world below. "Chancellor Krell," he said, "your fleet is destroyed. Your defenses are broken. Your empire has fallen. You have two choices. Surrender and face justice for your crimes, or resist and watch your cities burn. You have 1 hour to decide." In his palace, Krell watched the message with growing despair. Through the windows, he could see the burning debris of his fleet falling through the atmosphere like shooting stars. His advisors had fled or been arrested. His guards were abandoning their posts. He was alone. For 300 years, he had believed himself invincible. For 300 years, he had crushed every threat, defeated every enemy, destroyed every challenge to his power. And now, a species he had dismissed as vermin was about to take everything from him. The hour passed. Krell's response was silence. Taiho nodded slowly. "Begin bombardment of military targets. Avoid civilian areas if possible. But end this today." The Alliance fleet opened fire on the planet below. Military bases evaporated. Weapon factories melted. Government buildings collapsed. The symbols of Empire power burned one by one. Finally, Krell sent a message. His voice was broken, barely recognizable. "I surrender. Stop the bombardment. I will accept whatever terms you offer. Just ... stop." Taiho ordered the fleet to cease fire. "Ambassador Jaewon, prepare the treaty. We will sign it on the surface." In the throne room. The Treaty of Theron was signed in the same room where Una Park had been murdered 3 years earlier. The marble floor had been cleaned, but everyone present knew what had happened there. The memory hung in the air like smoke. Chancellor Krell sat at the table, looking older and smaller than anyone had ever seen him. His 4 hands shook as he held the pen. Around him stood representatives of humanity and the Free Systems Alliance, Tirani Beck, Neron, and many others. All watching the tyrant who had oppressed them finally face justice. Ambassador. Jaewon placed a small object on the table before the signing. It was Una Park's diplomatic badge, the same one she had worn when she came offering peace. "This belonged to the woman you killed," Jay said quietly. "She came here believing that different species could live together in harmony. You murdered her for that belief. Today, her dream becomes reality, and you will spend the rest of your life knowing that everything you built has been torn down." Krell signed the treaty without speaking. His eyes were empty, his spirit broken. The terms were harsh. The Velkai Empire was dissolved forever. All occupied species gained independence. War criminals would face tribunal. Humanity took control of key strategic systems. The Velkai people would be allowed to govern themselves. But they would never threaten the galaxy again. 10 years later, Hanakong stood before a memorial on Earth. The statue showed Una Park as she had been in life, strong and hopeful, reaching out her hand in friendship. Behind her was a wall carved with the names of everyone who had died in the war. Human names, Tirani names, Beck names. So many names. Hannah was retired now. Her body carried too many scars, too many old wounds that ached when it rained. But she still came here every year on the anniversary of Una's death. A group of children visited the memorial that day. They were from different species, all studying together at the first integrated academy in the Alliance. Among them was a young Tirani girl who looked at the statue with curious eyes. "Who is she?" The girl asked her teacher. Hannah stepped forward before the teacher could answer. "Her name was Una Park," she said gently. "She was a woman who believed in peace more than anything. And when peace was taken from her, her people made sure the galaxy would never forget the cost of that theft. The girl tilted her head. Was she a soldier? Hannah smiled sadly. No. She was something better. She was someone who tried to make friends instead of enemies. And when that failed, she inspired others to fight for a better future. Everything you see around you, this peace, this alliance, this friendship between species, it all started with her. The girl looked at the statue again, then at Hannah. Are you a soldier? I was, for a long time, but now I am something else. Now I am a teacher, like your guide here. I teach young people about history so they understand why peace matters and why it must be protected. The children moved on to other parts of the memorial. Hannah stayed behind, looking at the statue of her old friend, far above. Ships from a dozen different species crossed the sky. Human freighters traded with Tirani merchants. Beck scientists collaborated with Narration researchers. The galaxy that had once been divided by fear and hatred was slowly learning to work together. It had cost so much. So many lives. So much pain. But something beautiful had grown from all that sacrifice. Una would have liked it, Hannah thought. She would have liked to see this. The sun set over the memorial, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Hannah placed a single flower at the base of the statue, then turned and walked away. Behind her, Una Park's bronze face continued to smile, her hand still extended in friendship. Forever welcoming the better future she had given her life to create, the war was over. The Empire had fallen. And humanity, once dismissed as insignificant vermin, had changed the galaxy forever, not through conquest. Not through cruelty, but through the simple, stubborn refusal to accept injustice. That was the human way, and the galaxy would never forget it.